A very good morning to all of you and namaste. Since last few days we are discussing various aspects of our body. Yesterday we talked about the concept of Panchakosha. Today we are going to understand a very interesting, I would say, new to us. Of course, this particular technique is existing and is being practiced all over the globe since ages. But I am getting the opportunity to introduce to you this unique therapy, which has been a part and parcel of our yogic practices since olden times. Before we enter into the topic, as I did yesterday, we need to find out what is the necessity of going back. What is the necessity of finding out that these therapies are relevant today? So, in order to find the relevance and need of this particular technique, I wish to start with the first slide, which says that, again, the way we started yesterday, we are in this modern 21st century, and in this century, with advancement of technology, modernization, we have tried to make our life more easy, comfortable. Most of the technological breakthroughs are there for making our life healthier and comfortable. Today we have searched the life, or the search, we have tried to do the research, we have tried to discover the things from microscopic world to the macroscopic various galaxies and things of universe. The point is, despite of this much of huge technological advancement, modernization, has our life become really healthy and comfortable? As we saw it yesterday, today the science, technology, even I believe the religion, so-called religious, our schools have reached a very vital turning point. And the turning point is to turn within. Whatever the research, whatever the discoveries that are happening, are all happening around us. The world around us has been very well discovered, explored. But the objective of man's life is to find the health and happiness. The question is, despite of this technological advancement in every field, despite of a lot of research, availability of information, despite of abundance of mundane comforts and luxury, is man healthy and happy? We take always example of developed countries. In developed countries, if you see the incidence of various diseases, the so-called modern day medical approach is also based on our body. It says that body is machine. We have a lot of specialization for various organs. We have specialized information, specialized branches have been developed. We have a pill for every problem today. There is a lot of facility, medical expertise available to us for being healthy and happy. But despite of all this, we see that if we compare ourselves to this present era with 50 years back, we would observe that the incidence of psychosomatic, autoimmune and immunodeficiency disorders is alarmingly growing. This is not just out of my own speculation, but this is what is a leading journal like Lancet is saying. If you see globally, today, once upon a time, we had the highest prevalence of diseases like tuberculosis, pneumonia, diarrhea, the diseases that are caused by infections. The prevalence of those diseases was very high. But today, if you see in this 21st century, the incidence of the diseases like heart disease, cancer, stroke, various types of allergic and chronic lung disorders, the incidence of diabetes, incidence of psychological disturbances is alarmingly growing. So there is a change, there is a shift in incidence and prevalence of various disorders. So that shift could be seen in this way. Generally, the diseases are classified today into two main categories according to the WHO, the World Health Organization. It classifies the diseases into what is called as a communicable group and a non-communicable group of diseases. The communicable ones are the ones which are directly causing due to the action of a communicable agent, that is a microbial agent. Whereas today's main problem that we all are facing is the problem of non-communicable disorders. The incidence of those disorders which are not communicated from one to another, but they are caused due to our lifestyle. So that's why today we say most of our illnesses are lifestyle based disorders. Earlier we thought if there is a cause, if there is a specific cause, okay, I have a tuberculosis, okay, that is because of a specific bacterium, we have a particular drug, if you take that, your disease is healed. There is a problem, there is a remedy, that's it. But today the situation of diseases is not like that. The diseases are caused by multifactorial reasons. The causes of various disorders, the modern day disorders, is multifactorial. So the cause is external as well as internal. If you see globally, in 2004 there were about 60 million deaths worldwide because of the non-communicable disorders. Non-communicable diseases accounts for about 60% of deaths and injuries all over the world, whereas injuries and violence only 10%. It is estimated that by 2020, it is the toll of death due to the non-communicable diseases would raise to almost 75%. So, if we see, there is a epidemiological transition. There is a change of balance of diseases in the population from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases. Once upon a time, we said when the penicillin was found or various types of antibiotics were found, the scientists and the people said that we have got the answer for all diseases. They thought that the human beings can be healthy whenever, whatever the challenge that comes. But over the period of time, we have seen that the antibiotics that were used about 10 years back are no more effective today because those have gained a resistance. As we have researched newer and newer techniques, on the other side, nature also has evolved. The microorganisms have also become more stronger and they are able to sustain the effects. So, on the other side, though we think that the communicable diseases are slowing down, of course the incidence of various communicable diseases has reduced, but there is another challenge that is coming in the form of AIDS, which is also because of lack of immune response or immune responsiveness, the strength of immunity in our body. So we shall come to that, but at this moment I wish to bring here to your notice that the incidence of various infectious disorders, the proportion of total mortality due to infectious diseases has definitely declined from 1910 to 1991 or recently. Definitely in both the genders we find that there is a definite decrease in incidence of communicable diseases. But on the other side, if you see, the incidence of non-communicable disorders is in both the genders is alarmingly growing. The mortality rates among men and women aged between, this is the average, we can say the age, productive age, and this is where the incidence of non-communicable diseases is growing. You can see the light blue, this is a dark blue and the light blue. The incidence you can see is rising, and here are the its distribution worldwide. You can see in the most of the developed, so-called developed countries, where there are lots of amenities for good living standards, even then the incidence of these diseases is growing. The question is, why? Despite of this technological advancement, we consider ourselves to be more educated, more informed, having lot of information. Despite of that, we human beings are suffering from various disorders. The only reason is, in the name of development and modernization, we are going away from the nature. Not just away, but we are going against the nature. Answer is, let's return back to nature, which is the nature which is not just around us, but which is within as well. And the science that provides us the insight of this nature, the fabric of this nature, the rules, the laws of this nature are very well discussed in the knowledge of yoga. So in order to understand the nature that is around us and within us, the knowledge of yoga is an imperative. So today, yoga is the need of hour, and we as yoga therapists have the job to understand its intricacies, understand its smaller principles. They are very simple principles, but imbibe those principles and translate it in our practices in the form of therapy. Today, generally, I being a practitioner of yoga and naturopathy, we generally define naturopathy. Naturopathy is a science which is based on experiential evidence. From ages together, we have been practicing, like every day you drink a lot of water, you have a healthy eating habits. All these are the principles that we preach in naturopathy, and this all wisdom is based on experience. Whereas yoga is also experiential, but it has a strong scriptural basis, scriptural evidence. Both these sciences are way of life. In naturopathy, we mainly emphasize or make use of the nature which is around us, whereas in yoga we use the nature that is within us. So both are ways of life. Maybe today evening we shall try to talk about the principles of yoga therapy, which shall go into the details how yoga is a way of life. Both could be considered as art, discipline, both have philosophy, and both provide a path, a systematic practices to reach to the state of health and happiness. Very interestingly, and why this yoga is becoming more popular today, is because yoga doesn't contain anything which could be toxic, which could be suppressive, and which could be invasive. So all our techniques that we provide today are non-invasive, non-pharmacological, non-suppressive, without any hazards, without any side effects. And that's why yoga therapy or yoga has a very intense relevance and need today. Again, interestingly, most times if you see the present available medical treatments that are available, they only take care of one component of our life. Whereas these both systems, particularly the yoga, is a system which has effect not only on the physical body, but on the psychological as well as emotional, social and spiritual. Of course, that is the base planes of our being. So both, I would say, I would define naturopathy as a science of holistic healing, whereas yoga is a science of holistic living. Having said this, let's try to understand the definition of health. What is health? Generally we understand, a general common understanding about health is like that if I do not have any problem in my body, I don't have any aches and pains in my body, that means I am healthy. General common understanding means the niroga avastha. If that is when there is no disease, there is no lack of ease in my body, that means I am healthy. But that was the earlier understanding about health. Now, as we are progressing and we are understanding the laws of nature as well as the health, Health has been defined by WHO again, that the health is not mere absence of disease. Generally we say health means what? If there is no disease in my body, that means I am healthy. But no, that is not that mere state. It is a feeling of well-being, feeling of completeness, feeling of balance at physical, mental, social, and even recently they have added a dimension of spiritual planes of being. So health has many dimensions, and it has holistic, therefore it requires the holistic approach. Health is also a state which is a state of dynamic homeostasis. If you observe yourself, if the health is a state of balance, this balance is continuously being changed by various factors that influence our health. We can call them as the determinants of health, and those are within us as well as outside of us. We shall of course go into those more details later on, but the point I want to emphasize here is that there is a need for holistic living and healing today. So we need to have holistic approach in our treatments. Towards that, yesterday we have seen and understood the concept of Panchakosha, the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and the Anandamaya. We have discussed this in length. Now, if all of us we want to be healthy, and if you want to make everyone around us more healthier and happier, today the options that we have, the facilities and the medical modalities that we have are these. One is the most commonly, almost all over the world, 90% of people follow and use the modern medical treatment called as allopathic medicine. There is also called as Ayurvedic medicine, Oriental, that is traditional Chinese medicine, homeopathic medicine, Siddha and Unani, naturopathy, yoga, physiotherapy, manipulative therapies, body-mind therapies. There are plenty of therapies that are there. So there are so many disciplines, there are so many modalities that are available to us to be or to reach out to that level of complete health. But again, as we generally understand, none of these therapies are complete in themselves. We need to have an approach of integration. So there are some therapies which could be very useful in some diseases. Some therapies will be useful in another disease. So we as a yoga therapist, because we can say we are the ones who take this holistic approach to modern medical science. So we need to be more accommodating and open to various options or various modalities that are there. Today, I am going to talk about a very interesting therapy called as auto-urine therapy. The moment we hear this word, suddenly a kind of aversion, a kind of maybe some would have aversion, some would have interest. All that depends upon the kind of beliefs that we have gathered since earlier. So generally, it's in my experience, whenever I talk about this therapy, people get averted. People think, what are you talking? So that is the general initial response that everybody would have. But today, I want to tell you that this therapy is something which has a very traditional basis, as well as it is not just traditional and it was being practiced by our rishis, ancient people, but it is practiced today, everywhere. All of us, we are using it. Only thing is that we do not know. So how is that? We are going to find out. So traditionally, the auto-urine therapy is known as Shivambu Cikitsa. In Shivambu is a word, Sanskrit word, and Cikitsa means to say therapy or the way we treat the illness. So the process of treatment, we can say, is Cikitsa. So it is known worldwide as auto-urine therapy. Also people call it as a water of life therapy. So why it is called as a water of life? Because this word Shivambu has two small words. One is Shiva and one is Ambu. Shiva means, actually Shiva, the moment we say Shiva, we get the picture of Lord Shiva, that is the Shankara, Mahadeva. But according to the Sanskrit, we say Shiva is the principle. Shiva is the principle, or the a thing which is holy, which is pure, which is auspicious. So Shiva is a principle which is auspicious, pure and holy. And Ambu directly means water. So Shivambu is that water which can provide us life. And that's why this therapy is known as water of life therapy. Now, who said this, that our own urine is so auspicious? Who said this, that this could be used as one of the modality for treatment? This is not told by anybody else, but this is what our traditional science of healing says. In India, there were two important sciences which have grown over the period of time and have been validated, used by thousands of years by all of our traditional people. And those two systems were Ayurveda and Yoga. Ayurveda was used for healing, whereas Yoga was used for living. So Ayurveda in Sushrut Samhita says human urine is an antidote to poisons. So human urine is considered to be one of the best thing to remove the toxins from our body. So here the word poison doesn't mean that actual poison, but it means that the toxicity that we generate over a period of time because of the wrong ways of life, wrong food habits, today's lot of environmental factors, the urine could be one of the best thing to remove that toxin from our system. Whereas there is another text says Bhava Prakash, which says that human urine destroys the toxins and if properly used gives new life. It purifies our blood, clears our various skin problems and is sharp in its taste, contains many salt. So how many of you have cried sometime? All of us, we have cried sometime, and sometime we have seen that water gets into our mouth and how it is salty. So most of our body fluids are salty because they contain minerals. There is another text, Ashtanga Sangraha, which says that and there is another text called as Harita Samhita. Both of them actually in a brief they say that the human urine sometimes, of course it again depends upon the kind of food that we take, is bitter, is light, it destroys the diseases of eye, makes our body strong, improves our digestion, destroys cough and cold. So these are the different references. The intention of me to put this various references is to tell you that this is being told in traditional Ayurvedic scriptures. There is one more scripture which named Yoga Ratnakar says that human urine controls the bile, that is pitta in the blood, destroys the worms. Now the word actually here, it is called as a krimi. Krimi means worm. Actually it doesn't mean worm, I would say any microorganism. You must have seen, and I have seen it in many traditions, if somebody gets a wound, the person is asked to urinate on that so that it won't spread or it won't get infected. So urine is traditionally used as antiseptic agent. Actually in 1999 I happened to visit Germany for a conference on urine therapy. That was a world conference on urine therapy, and when we had gone from India, a couple of doctors, we went there saying that the urine therapy is something which is a traditionally followed in India. But to my surprise, we found that there were so many doctors and various therapists there, and many of them presented various bases or references which told that the urine therapy is not traditionally only used in India, but it is used all over the world. There were people
from Africa, and they told that in African tribes they very commonly use the urine. If there is a scorpion bite, immediately they would ask the person to drink his own urine. If there was a bite by some snake, if there is any wound, they would ask the people to drink their own urine. Not only that, from the Arabian countries, there was one person who came and he said that they traditionally use the camel urine for various treatments. So to tell you here that in Ayurveda, so what I have the references and information I am trying to put here, but there are many references all over the world which say that the urine has medicinal properties and which has been used traditionally over a period of time for healing. So this Yoga Ratnakar says that urine not only controls the bile, destroys the worms, means it works as an antibiotic, antiseptic. It cleans the intestine. The people who have practiced urine therapy often say that their problem of constipation is relieved. Their intestines become very clean. And therefore, since the intestines are cleansed, immediately their digestion is improved. And of course, all of you know that in therapy, we emphasize on our digestive system. In Ayurveda, we call most of our diseases are caused by wrong digestion. And if the digestion is right, then only the healing can happen. And for that, urine therapy is considered to be very useful. It also controls the cough and it calms down the nerves. It is useful to calm down the nerves. Means what? It says that it is useful to relieve the stress. So it has a calming effect. It relaxes your system. It is again sharp in taste, destroys the laziness. So a person who is tamasic, for him a urine therapy will be very useful. And it's a wrong spelling there. It is something which is very useful against various toxins. Again, these are the different scriptures which are talking about urine therapy. In Ayurveda, there comes one chapter called as a Mutra Varga. So there is a chapter which describes about the properties and uses of urine of various animals. It talks about the urine of elephant, cow urine, camel urine, goat's urine, and all that has been very well discussed in Ayurveda. Here, this Ratnakar says that human urine is laxative. It is a mild laxative. It cleanses the intestine. All of you must be have experienced. How many of you have done Laghu Shankha Prakshalana? Laghu Shankha Prakshalana. Yes. What we do? We drink lukewarm salt water. So salt water is rich with, it is called as hypertonic solution. It contains salt, so it contains salts. That's why it is not easily absorbed in the intestines. It gets flushed out, and that's why you get that purgative or laxative effect of cleansing. Same way, whenever our urine has those salts, it works as laxative. It is rich with vital minerals. Again, it says it is bitter and sharp in taste. It acts as an antibiotic liquid. It heals the dental decays. If somebody holds the urine in the mouth, it strengthens teeth. I have many testimonies. People come to us saying that I had teeth. A person at the age of 50, he said he had teeth which was almost about to fall, and there was no problem as such, but it had weakened and it was moving. So he went to see a dentist. Dentist said, you can remove it and we shall do the another teeth grafting there. But he just followed the urine therapy, and he comes and says that at the age of 70, he says that still I have that same teeth with which I am working. So it really helps in various dental problems. For wounds, many people have experienced that. I am going to share those testimonies further, that how the urine therapy has been very useful in management of various chronic wounds and various ulcers. For skin diseases, it is one of the miraculous therapy. It also works as anti-aging agent. How many of you don't want to be, or how many of us want to be always young? Everybody would raise their hands, isn't it? We always want to look young. So we never want to become old. And urine therapy, and what is that is there in the urine therapy or urine which makes us or which keeps us young? We shall discover that further. So it also says it clears the vata, pitta and kapha related diseases. So this is actually this, I would say, summarizes the entire various effects of urine traditionally been told in this particular scripture, which says that the urine is useful in not only vata, pitta and kapha. It is used in all three doshas. And here this particular says it human urine wins over all toxins and destroys the problem of arthritis. Now I have tried to put some of those references that are found in Ayurveda or Ayurvedic scriptures. Now we find references in yogic scriptures also. So urine therapy or urine using urine as one of the techniques for our spiritual development could be seen in yogic texts. The traditional yogic texts like Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Gheranda Samhita and Shiva Samhita contains details about a technique called as Amroli Kriya. All of us, we know that in yoga we have various techniques, the techniques which work at different levels. We have seen techniques for Annamaya Kosha, like doing certain physical asanas and even doing certain mudras, certain bandhas. There are certain techniques for Manomaya Kosha, the pranayama, there are kriyas. So generally commonly practiced Shat kriyas, the 6 types of kriyas are very popular, but there are certain advanced kriyas that are being told and that are not very well discussed everywhere because it has so many other reasons. But one of the technique or one of the kriya called as Amroli involves the consumption of our own self urine. The scripture says, what is Amroli? Amroli, the word Amroli is Amar, means becoming immortal, and the kriya, the Amroli, means the kriya doing which you would become immortal. So that doesn't mean that we are not going to die. It simply conveys the meaning that we would have such a kind of a physical body or physical structure which will help us to become or to reach out to that state of immortality. That is the goal. So Amroli, what it is? So Amroli is drinking of midstream urine. How? By leaving the first and the last part of our urine. So first part of the urine, like when one person is urinating, the first some part is considered to be pungent, too pungent. This is how it is explained. And the last part only contains water. That's why you leave out the first and last part of this thing. Collect the midstream urine and he who drinks the Amri snuffs it daily. So he like does the Nasyapana and practices a kriya called as Vajroli, is said to be practitioner of Amroli. That's what this particular verse says. In India, there have been many saints and spiritual teachers, yogis. One among them is Sant Kabir. And there are beautiful poems written by Sant Kabir, and in one of his poem, he says that the Amroli is one of the best technique for spiritual sadhana. He says, well, I cannot fully translate this, but he says this technique is the one which helps us to. So yeah, I will just read out. Amari amar lok se aayi, teen lok mein nirbhay bhai, tan sodhe man rakhe dheer. It means that it not only cleanses the body, but it strengthens your mind. Why yoga people or the people who are aspirants of spirituality have taken up this urine therapy is because it helps for mental stabilization, mental purification as well. So it is a khari need, it is a salty in its taste. Okay, so we have seen so far the references that are available in Ayurveda. We have seen the references that are available in yoga. Now there are references about urine therapy in Tantra. Like traditionally in India, actually the yoga, Tantra and Ayurveda were not separate sciences. All of them were used for happier and healthier living and spiritual living. But now we understand them as a different shastras. And traditionally there is another very interesting scripture called as a Damar Tantra Grantha. That is a scripture called as Damar Tantra. Basically it is a conversation between Lord Shiva and Parvati. If somebody asks me who is the inventor of this therapy or who is the father of this therapy, we will have to say that the Lord Shiva himself is the father of this particular science. So he has evolved. So there is a very 107 verses are there which talk about complete the procedure of this Amroli or Shivambu Kalpa Vidhi, and it is a conversation between Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati. When Mother Parvati asks Lord Shiva that what is the secret of becoming healthier and more beautiful and remain younger for a longer duration, then he starts describing the therapy of Amroli or Shivambu. This conversation is quite in detail. People who are interested, there is a very beautiful description that is available to us, and it is even translated in various languages today. So it contains the procedure of urine drinking. So how you collect the urine, in which patra, that is in which vessel you collect it. Then while drinking there is a procedure. So they have made a ritual for that. How do you drink it? Then what are its internal applications, what are its external applications, how it could be applied externally, used externally, what diet must be taken, and very importantly what lifestyle must be followed. So it talks about what is called as the Dinacharya and the Rutucharya. Dinacharya means the day-to-day changes in our life, like with the nature's rhythm, how you live your life, that is Dinacharya. And Rutucharya is according to the changes in the climate. You do certain changes and then you use the urine as a medicine. Also this particular conversation talks about various herbs. It talks about various plants which could be used with urine for achieving the benefits in various diseases. So suppose somebody has a problem with the pitta vikara, how one can combine intake of urine with certain herbs. So there is a description about it. There is another tantra, a scripture called as a Ganarnava Tantra, which recommends urine for prevention or promotion of health and particularly emphasizes on spiritual development. You would say, okay, fine. Urine therapy was practiced by those old Vaidyas and Rishis because that time this modern science was not developed. People had no other option. That's why they followed the urine therapy. Now we are in 21st century. We have reached Moon and Mars, and what you're talking that you drink your own urine, this appears to be nonsense. Or some may have very strong religious beliefs. Somebody would say, no, in our particular religion the urine is considered to be very dirty and nonsense, and it is considered unholy. But again, the references which would support urine therapy are not only found in the traditional yogic, tantric and Ayurvedic scriptures, but they are found in various religious texts also. In Vedas also you would find that there are references. In a text called as a Mahabharata, there is a dialogue between Lord Sri Krishna and a Rishi, and they talk about using urine for therapy. Not only that, in a religion called